This is the Westminster Standard Podcast. I'm Ryan Beasy. Today, I'm joined by a returning favorite of the podcast, the Reverend, the Doctor, the church historian, David Hall. Welcome, sir.
Hi, Ryan. Hope you and your family and church are doing well. Good to talk to you again.
Well, thanks for giving up some time. So, David, you are the de facto, if not the de jure, historian of the Presbyterian Church in America. So, can you give us a sense of where we are right now in terms of how the PCA ebbs and flows over her 52 years of history?
Well, first, a correction and disclaimer. I can never be the PCA historian as long as Will Barker is alive. Will was my wonderful church history professor, and I believe he's still in good health. I know he's still a big St. Louis Cardinals fan. So, yeah, I'm just a hack. But in any event, I do keep up with this from year to year, and I guess I'm old enough to have seen a little slice of history. In some ways, this will sound like an amillennial eschatology. There are ups and downs. I'm not sure we're radically different from where we were, say, 30 years ago. I think people who are confessional conservative were buoyed and cheered by the last, probably 4 or 5 years of assemblies, because there seem to be some conservative victories. I hope they last. Forgive my skepticism, but I've been told that the Son of National Partnership is reviving and coming back. That would not surprise me. The PCA has a long sordid history of caucus groups, and so those have this tug of war that go on at our assembly, and what it seems to me, if one wanted to make the case that there had been good progress in the last 5 years, my theory is that the moderates determine the outcome of the PCA, and more often than not, moderates go with the status quo. So as long as moderates go with the status quo, nothing's going to change. To the degree that it's sort of a glaring event like a same-sex pastor or something like that, then the moderates kind of all sort of move to the right. Whether that's long-term or not, I'm not sure. In some ways, we're the same. The PCA was born a mixed assembly. There were dispensationalists at the foundation of the PCA. There were independents. There were actually very few, what you and I would speak of as self-conscious Reformed people, and most of them had been educated at Westminster Seminary in Philly at the time, or elsewhere. So I think in some ways we're where we were 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I'd like to be more optimistic. But I've seen a lot of ups and downs, and we probably should be cautious claiming either victory or wailing about defeat prematurely.
That's good. That's good. Well, you and your presbytery work to ensure the purity and the peace of the PCA. You've sent up a number of overtures. Northwest Georgia was busy last weekend. So you've got this, is it the Committee on Presbyterian Efficiency? Tell me about this one.
Well, we sort of recommended a cute name, CORE, Committee on Operations, Resources, and Expenses. I think the state clerk has already retitled it, but that's neither here nor there in his listing of it. But it's not just a recent sense that we have a huge bureaucracy that spends tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think people in local churches feel a good bit separated and alienated. Of course, AC and others lament every year that maybe only 50% of churches give. Well, in local church, you probably have to pause and ask, is there a reason for that? Could there possibly be something we're doing to disincentivize people to give? Or could we do something to incentivize them more? This overture sincerely wants to see the PCA grassroots heard from, more engaged, making suggestions, offering good ideas. There could be hundreds of really great ideas outside of the small echo chamber that plans our assemblies, and that is the collective group of, say, the coordinators and those leaders. So I just think there's a lot of gifts in the PCA. I don't think there's any shortage of that. I think we need to have a defined process that opens the church up. That's what this overture is targeted for. It's targeted to try to have the grassroots truly get re-engaged. I think they were at a greater degree 30, 40, 50 years ago,
Mm.
and be involved in the life of the church. That's not happening in the opinion of a lot of people. I'm certainly not the only one.
One of the things I've heard, and I don't remember where I heard it, but people lamenting and complaining about this Overture 27 was, well, there's nothing to stop people from sending up suggestions now. Why do we need a special committee to do that? Well, I think having a special committee set up to do that shows an interest. Just like, if we have problems or if there's discontent in a local congregation and the pastor's attitude is, well, anybody can come talk to me at any time. Well, that you may get one. But if the session has an open forum and says, hey, we want to answer your questions, we want to receive suggestions, that's going to invite a lot more conversation, don't you think?
Yeah, or maybe the analogy would be a professor who has office hours
Yeah.
rather than just contact me sometime if he's in his office a little bit. Yeah, I think a concerted effort is needed. Again, I think the problems are large enough that doing business as normal, just saying, well, same old, send us an idea if you have, because the truth of the matter is, more often than not, I haven't done an empirical study, but I could, and one of your listeners will. It wouldn't take that long. I think if somebody does an empirical study, I think you'll find that out of, let's just say 10 suggestions to pick on a committee, the administrative committee, to do things differently, likely 11 of those 10 get turned down. So, there's been this huge bucket of cold water. It seems to me that this could be a great opportunity. By the way, I would like to think that every coordinator would be happy about this. In fact, as a PR step, my suggestion would be that every committee and every coordinator said, "This is a great idea. Let's do it. Give us your good ideas. We'll listen. We'll talk together. We'll meet together." Because that would be a lot better. For example, that would almost make our leaders in Lawrenceville look proactive and open. If that doesn't happen, there's probably a very decent likelihood there'll be a minority report and discussions that might not be pleasing to people. So hopefully the whole church could rally around this. I see seems to me there's nothing to be lost. There's no income to be lost. We would certainly spend hundreds of thousands more dollars doing other boondoggles. But it seems to me this would be a good thing to do, and it's a good time.
Yeah, and who wants to be against efficiency? The civil magistrate has set up a paragovernmental organization simply looking at efficiency, and why should the church steward its resources
Yeah,
less carefully?
right. Why would we want to have a lower standard than that? Now, I know some people have been sort of quick to say, well, this is your attempt to channel Elon Musk and his Doge agency. Well, uh, you can read my book and my history of articles and know that I've been pretty anti-bureaucratic for a long time, and so I don't think this is certainly not a copycat thing. But I would say if somebody wants to allege that this is an ecclesiastical copying of Doge or Elon Musk, then who are the targets? Would the targets be USAID? And which PCA agency wants to own that? Would the target would it be? Does that mean our permanent committees are like the Department of Education, or that one of our other committees is like those that have grants to Harvard and Columbia to support Hamas? So I'd be pretty careful making that comparison, because I don't think people who are targeted that come off too well with that analogy. So if people want to use that, that's okay.
Well, and we've heard so much about the demographic shifting in the country and the culture that, over the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of churches closing just because towns are dying, people are dying. Well, in advance of that, before we're under the gun, so to speak, maybe we should get more efficient at running our committees and agencies. even you say there's a $200 million spent through our committees and agencies. Even 1% of that is a huge number.
Right. Yeah. And our overture asks for at least 10% to be used to return. I would hope more to the
Yeah.
lower courts. And here's you. I call this playing with math as an example. If it, of that $200 million contribution, and it'll be more this year, by the way.
Mm.
That's based on figures that are at least almost 2 years old. If you have $200 million and you simply send a tithe back to the lower courts in a blind formula, some people say, "Oh, this is hard. We can't figure out our formula." Of course you can. The math is pretty simple. I'm a pastor, a liberal arts guy. If you have 400,000 communicant and non-communicant members, 400,000 total members of the PCA, divided into $20 million, gives you a pro rata share of $50 per member. If you have a presbytery like ours, with say about 2,000 members, and the folks at Central Banking were to return a grant based on that prorated share and send $100,000 to Northwest Georgia Presbytery, man, we're going to put that money to work in church planting. We're going to put that to work in knowing which churches need help with interns. We've got foreign missionaries that need support. And I dare say we're pretty close to the ground on that. And imagine if you're a large presbytery. Seems like a large presbytery would be thrilled at that. So again, we can have people fiddle while Rome burns and say, "Oh, this is too hard." What's the? Yeah, you can always find a problem with any overture or any idea, and I'm sure ours could be improved. And I welcome the Overtures Committee and the Assembly improving it. But what I think you have an opportunity to do is to unleash some resources back to the presbyteries and to decentralize some things. To me, that's a win-win-win.
Yeah, yeah, and you're there in the suburbs of Atlanta on the other side from Lawrenceville. What ideas might you have that you can share to prime the pump here?
For particular ministries, you mean?
Yeah, there are ways that Lawrenceville could save money other than turning the air conditioner up 2 degrees or something like
Well,
that.
my guess is there's you'd have to do like the Doge committee. You'd have to start and go, well, what are we employing? How much? What are our salary lines? Of
Mm.
course, everybody right now is looking at by faith. I think by faith certainly it should have been. In fact, I was on the administrative committee in the 2010s, and the budget was only $350,000. It was wasted then. It went up to 500,000 over my 4 years on the administrative committee. I asked for and recommended every year to cut by faith entirely, and was routinely voted down about 14-1,
Mm.
which is sort of par for my tenure on any committee. But nonetheless, then the by faiths dropped the paper subscription, which was a waste, and yet lo and behold, doing things online, it goes up. I mean, this is just a dinosaur. This is a bloated bureaucracy. There's no real great substance. There are a couple of kind of cute, interesting stories, but look at yesterday. I mean, just yesterday, By Faith puts an article up commending the prayer theology of Karl Barth, and then in what I would think would be embarrassing in less than 12 hours, I had to take it down. I keep wondering, is there something about the month of April every year that predestines some of our public leaders to invite the David Frenches of the world, or to ask for Karl Barth to be esteemed as a prayer guide, or to do some of the other things that have made headlines this past quarter, just to be embarrassed. It seems to me that we have some leaders that are very either tone deaf or out of touch with the grassroots. Again, I hope this overture or some other measure, if somebody's got a better idea, I'm all for that. If there's some other overtures, better ideas, uh, we've got to get a little bit more of a reunification between our top leaders that seem a little bit removed and distant. And I think that lends itself to making the kind of mistakes that are really embarrassing. And within a day of social media, the old days when you could get away with this stuff are just gone.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, we were founded as a grassroots denomination, but now that in the age of social media, it seems like there's a huge disconnect between the grassroots and headquarters down in Lawrenceville, at least the way you describe it. Why do you think that is? Why, how has new media, blogs, podcasts, changed? And do you see Lawrenceville as keeping up?
Well, let me answer that a little bit differently. I'm not sure it's primary. I mean, the media is, I think, a secondary factor. The primary factor is just what simple as what we call tenure.
Hmm.
Any bureaucracy, once bureaucrats are ensconced, tends to protect itself. That's why we're fully aware and expect all of the bureaucrats to unite and oppose this, and probably call yours truly bad names. Maybe even talk about my recently deceased mother, and accuse
Oh.
us of kicking puppies and hating flowers. I mean, it's the nature of bureaucracy to defend itself and to perpetuate itself. And unfortunately, as you look at the national government as well as ecclesiastical government, not only to defend and perpetuate itself, but to expand itself. So I think the PCA over the years has just expanded itself way too far. And again, the key to that, I think, if we want to see real renewal and revival and revitalize churches, you've got to kick those funds down to the presbytery. We have to relocate some of the activity and decision making back to the lower courts.
Hmm.
Social media, secondly, does have a role in that. It's is really hard to control if you're a bureaucrat, and very disconcerting because you can't control that. Although there are always efforts to cancel or besmirch reputations. But again, like I said, expect, and you got it highlighted. The overture that we sent up was really intended to go to the Overtures Committee, which supposedly is supposed to be an independent group. A Senate was at least the pitch we were given back in 2007, that it would act in that fashion. But you see, it's referred to every other committee. This is like referring to every fox in the henhouse. I just wonder if between now and assembly, we're not going to see it referred, excuse my attempt at humor, but to the Women's Auxiliary, to Scout Troop 127, to a local PTA, and get everybody's coming. And by the nature of this overture, and again, if you understand the nature of bureaucracies, no one of these, other than the Overtures Committee, is going to be independent. No one of these is going to go, oh, well, we got some problems we need to look at. And it actually just proves our point. The referral of this to everybody and his brother, the input. I made a bet at assembly in the late '90s about a paper I presented, and I still hold tickets. I guess if somebody wants to challenge me, I'd be willing to bet that not a one of these permanent agencies or committees is going to be in favor of this. Somebody take me up on that. I'll buy you a steak in Chattanooga if even one of those
I'm
says
going with
right.
PCA Foundation. I bet PCA Foundation will come out in favor of this because they bring in all their own money, don't they? And they're giving it out to the presbyteries and to the other agencies.
If and boy, they've got a really good coordinator who's a good friend. I serve on a board with him. If they were to think independently and rationally, you'd win your bet.
Well, I have
But
hope, and
there's a powerful circling of wagons, and we want everybody to be team players. So you got to bet.
yeah, all right, and maybe they'll just refer it to the Overtures Committee, which perhaps that's what all of these agencies and committees will do. They'll
Yeah.
just refer it to the Overtures Committee. But walk me through how that will work on the General Assembly, because you could have conflicting recommendations, couldn't you? So what if the Overtures Committee recommends in favor, but what is AC gets there before,
Yeah.
and what would happen then?
I think what we've done, and I'm not sure if this is written, but I kind of think it is. But I think what we've done in the last 3 years, because of these multiple referrals, which is just a disaster, in my opinion. I went back and checked the RAO language, and it says that the clerk shall refer to things to the permanent committee that touch on their I forget the exact word. I just looked it up, but on their, basically on their business, their scope. That's not what this is. This is the General Assembly saying we want a better system and transparency. So it's not really refer back to say Geneva Benefits or MTW. It's not questioning what they do. But I was going to say, in the past recent years, when we've had all of these silly multiple referrals, I think they started in the time of a previous clerk, and almost inadvertently, almost always are designed to defeat a proposal. We've seen it common enough to know that. However, I think what the assembly does is I think they usually, the moderator or someone is asked to have whichever agency reports first, not necessarily report on this item, but to allow the OC to come with their recommendation. That, after all, is supposedly the purpose of the
Overtures.
OC. So if one of these other committee of commissioners jumps the line and does this, then you've created an even larger mess, which would not be in anybody's interest. So this will go to the Overtures Committee. Maybe the Overtures Committee turns it down. Maybe there's enough support to pass it and bring it to the floor. I personally think it would be good for the whole church, for everybody. Just talk about it on the floor. Don't be afraid of it. Don't. This is not harmful. This is not an ill-spirited overture. It's an attempt to be constructive, to get some of our best minds at work. Why wouldn't we want to let it be aired and talked about, other than, like I said, if all the coordinators decide that it would be a smart thing politically to get on board and do this, and then hope that nothing good passes. So, it could do that, or it could come to the floor by way of minority report. As you know, I've served on the Overtures Committee in the past, and we had a minority report. I want to say it was 2018 at the Assembly in Atlanta on women's roles, and we assembled a minority report of about 40% of the committee, and overnight the majority kind of came to their senses and said, this is not going to make us look good, and we ended up agreeing on things. So sometimes those minority reports are even helpful to bring a greater consensus. So we'll see. I'm sure that people will find problems. I'm sure people will say, yeah, you can already make your overtures. Of course you can, and do that. But back to one of your earlier questions, I think it would be helpful and positive for this to be a concerted effort. Our denomination needs something positive to rally around. And, I think we want to say, maybe we could just hand out red hats at the next assembly. Make the PCA great again.
Well, that would certainly be something. So, your hope with this isn't to stoke fear and suspicion, but enthusiasm and
Right.
thrift. So, and do I read this correctly, that your session is offering to fund this this committee minus any other contributions for its efforts? So it's not going to
That's
cost
correct.
AC
That's correct.
anything.
So you can't beat the price. You can't beat the price. And I would go back to one of the first overtures. First whereas. It's been decades since the PCA had any kind of systemic review. I don't count the 2006 to 2008 strategic long range planning group as a systemic review. That was just sort of a politicized event. Remember, that was the first place where a lot of people heard things like safe spaces, seat at the table, kind of almost an early push at diversity. But that didn't really address many of our operational facets. And then you have to go back to the mid to late 1980s, when there were some serious attempts to look at the structure of the PCA and see what needed to be done. So I don't know how you say we can't be improved. I don't know how with a straight face you say, well, we don't need improvement. We can't be improved. I don't know how you could possibly say on an income of over $200 million, some of this could do better.
Yeah, certainly some questions that, they're free questions, aren't they? Since Midway Presbyterian Church is going to pay for the committee unless somebody else steps up. That's very generous of you.
Well, I've jokingly said if somebody really is mad at me or wants to see me suffer, they should just call our bluff and approve it and make us dig down into our pockets.
That's one way. So you heard it here, folks. If you are upset at David Hall, vote yes on Overture 27.
You beat the mic. You beat the mic just before you call a question. Do that.
That's right. Well, Overture 28, moving on, another of Northwest Georgia's contributions to our General Assembly. It's been a rough year for Mission North America, and it's only April. There's an overture that demands both an apology and some personnel changes. You wrote the history of the first 50 years of the PCA. Has anything like this happened in the history of the denomination? Do you recall where the General Assembly has demanded a personnel change?
There was a push in 1986 and 87 to get rid of Morton Smith as stated clerk by the Broad Church wing of the PCA. But other than that, there's dissatisfaction from time to time with either an RUF coordinator or an MTW coordinator from time to time. But I don't know. Even then, those have all ended up being resignations. I guess I'm not aware, to put it this way. But I don't know that a coordinator has ever been not renewed as to his tenure. I just, that's baffling to me that we have so many gifts in our church. There's so many opportunities, and that year after year we have some of the same people doing some of the same things. And then sometimes they switch agencies and work for another one. I think people are kind of stirred up. It's been surprising to me this February and March when one strike, two strike, three strikes have occurred in the M&A basket. And I have to say, maybe it's to my shame, but I don't think I've ever even met Dr. Irwin Ince. My impression of him is he's very, very fine man. He seems like a very nice man. Did an excellent job moderating the assembly a few years ago, and I've heard really good things about him. So I don't have any personal animus. I actually feel a little bit sorry for him because he's just become the target of a lot of these things. And, we have different leaders that issued apologies, and then we sort of backtrack on those apologies. So we didn't really apologize. Then we apologize for something else. And then we get caught with the Karl Barth prayer guide. I almost expect some young guy like you or somebody, some whippersnapper, to start a website called something like the blooper of the week, the mistake of the week, and have people phone things in. But M&A is having a problem because I think they announced an utterly ridiculous name it, claim it program a couple of years ago. And I had this in my General Assembly write-up, and being the pain that I am, once you create a chart, if you leave blanks, you can track things for the next 5 years. But we supposedly in June of 24, we're going to be on our way to increasing our number of churches by 50% from roughly 2,000 to 3,000 by 2030. And after the first year of that program, for all of the budget, the M&A budget is what, $56 million. It's pretty large. For all of that budget, in terms of the number of churches, now to be sure there were some plants and we rejoice in that, but the net number of churches in the PCA went down last year, -3. So to reach our goal, we've got to start 107 new churches every year, which means actually that's 110 because we lost 3 this year. I'm going to be real surprised if we get to General Assembly and find that we have a net increase of 110 churches. So last year we had 12 added and 11 dissolved and 4 transferred. So we can rejoice that we have some churches growing, and but that transfer era is over where people would come in. So I think it's very unfortunate that we adopted a name it, claim it strategy, which the PCA has done before. We did that in the 80s with Vision 2000, and we've done that several times. And people mean well, but I think they're unfortunately creating a credibility gap when they adopt a secular strategy, which says just ask big, and then if you settle in between, everybody will be happy. It's better than nothing. But then when you lose ground, it seems to me like maybe people aren't so satisfied. I'm sorry, again, another reason, kick some of this back, delegate some of these funds back to the presbyteries, and then you'll see some growth in your churches.
Well, and that, that you raise an issue that the secular, aim for the moon, be among the stars model of, if you're going to set a goal and it's completely outrageous, if my goal is to lose 50 pounds next month,
Right.
well, that's not attainable. That's not going to keep me from eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms for breakfast, because that's absurd. But if my goal were to lose 5 pounds next month, that's something I can chart and track. So,
Right.
The Vision 2000 of have 2,000 churches by the year 2000. If we've met that goal, we just met it, and it's, what year is it? 2025. And so,
I think when that started, by the way, I think the net increase was maybe 1189. We didn't even have 1,200 churches then by 2000.
Yeah. And
So,
and they were accustomed to all this growth because of the RPCES coming in and church, the Ascension Presbytery up in Pennsylvania. So I just don't know how helpful is it.
favor. Yeah, with that kind of goal setting, I mean, that's just not going to work anywhere except a wacko charismatic cult that believes you can just make up these numbers and throw them. It's just not. There's no reality to it. So why is the church going to dig deep? Why are people going to sacrifice for and they look at it and they go, well, but look at but here's the chart. Look at the chart. We actually went the wrong way. And so now we got to make up more ground. And meanwhile, we're 1 year closer. So, maybe it's 2033. I'm sorry.
2033. I think it was 2030, and then they bumped it back to 2033.
No, I think it was 2033. We started in 2023, so I misspoke earlier. But the first year's number there, and we'll have the second year's number in mid-May as soon as the handbook comes out.
Yes, and these are good goals. We want to see the glory of the Lord cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. But it sounds like what you want and what you've written about is that you'd like reasonable goals, effective goals. I remember when we were going through we had a session retreat, and we were thinking, well, what would we like to see? What's the measure of growth? And I suggested the measure of growth in our congregation is attendance at evening worship. I said, okay, that's good, And I said, well, let's see if
that's a tough one.
Yes, because we've doubled our morning attendance, but evening worship is kind of not so much.
Yeah, I think it's Sinclair Ferguson who says any idiot can grow a church in the morning.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. That's probably not as elegant as he would put it, but the real test is things like that. So again, $200 million. My goodness, there's a lot of savings if you want to come up with that. Both M&A, MTW, RUF, all of these things. We're an industry, and the product is sort of hard to justify that much expense.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a better way to de-escalate and decentralize and send it down. Again, I'm open to that. It seems to me, though, as a Presbyterian, you'd want to work with your lower courts, both sessions and presbyteries. You want to get their ideas. You want to help fund them. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and on the subject of funding, word is making its way that there's a massive budget deficit in the general fund at Missions of North America, which I don't know what impact that will have on church planting, because there's the ministry funds, but then the general fund that funds administrative overhead. Can you speak to that?
Well, I guess I'm just a realist. I've heard some pretty big numbers, but I've also heard this is not the only year. So it seems to me that maybe it's well timed to right size that budget. Why don't we start there? Rather than find fault, why don't we right size that budget, and why don't we come up with an average last 4 years, say last 4 years of income, and let's say that's now the budget for M&A, unless you want to hire more fundraisers and development officers to raise funds, and then I think we should subtract the budget by their salaries. But let's say this is the salary, and if people are not reporting, I mean, the committee of commissioners of M&A can ask some hard questions, and probably will this year. I think the mood of the assembly is I think the mood is sort of buoyed up and similar to the mood of the country. I think people in America are while Trump has plenty of problems, I think they're glad to see government targeted to be smaller. Um, the House and Senate just agreed in concept to look for $1.5 trillion cuts in the next budget. That's a lot of Bitcoin, and and we're not on that scale, but I believe Ryan, you could correct me, but I think all of our office buildings are paid for, so we have no debt. I know that the buildings in St. Louis, Covenant Seminary, those are paid for. Covenant College, because it has a history of some new buildings, but they're largely paid for. And on a balance sheet, the assets certainly are greater than the debt. So
Well, and
the
things are going
PCA
great at the
has
college. They're going to have their largest class ever coming in next year, they think. So
so,
even if they have some debt, they can service that up at the college
right. But my point is, if we view this thing as a corporation, we basically have no debt.
yeah.
I mean, it's like our church. It's like our church here in Powder Spring. We have no debt. Praise the Lord. If you look at this as a business model and say, okay, what's the enterprise worth? If you add the land and all the different buildings, you go, oh well, there's like $35 million of assets.
Mm.
So you could, if a business would put that to work in the PCA, we have all of these buildings basically paid for by donations by good-hearted PCA people. And I think the goal ought to be, what can we do to unleash more giving? What can we do to have our people be enthused? What can we do to get more people really want to come to General Assembly and
Mm.
believe that their time at General Assembly is meaningful rather than just rubber stamping what another committee has said, rehiring the same old guy, approving cost of living increases, and never giving any serious review to greater effectiveness.
Yes, I agree. So let's. There's another overture that is kind of in this vein. Overture 9 from James River Presbytery. Again, the grassroots popping up and saying we want to
Yeah.
have a voice, and we want to not have our voice diluted by unelected appointed members from other committees. So, are you familiar enough with Overture 9 to walk us through?
Well overdue. Well overdue. What it would do is it would return us to the status quo ante before changes were made, and the administrative committee basically got neutered. And I think this was part of the 1987, 88 changes, but at some time in that period, the powers that be, the coordinators said, this is before the CMC, by the way. The CMC was not invented until 2007. The Cooperative Ministries Committee didn't start till 2007. But prior to that, the amendments were made to add the coordinator or his designate from some 9 different agencies with a total of membership of 20. So it's about a 55-45 split. Only 55% of our administrative committee is actually elected. So this would allow those people still to have their input, but now understand the duplication. We're also told we have to have all of these same people, the same spokesman, plus the last 5 moderators on the Cooperative Ministries Committee. What a redundancy. It's like if the coordinators didn't get enough voice and vote on the first time, then they got another chance to get it a second time in a second committee. So we just have this top-down stacking of a relatively small group of people who are wonderful men to the man, far more sanctified than I, better preachers, teachers, leaders, and that's good. But they're not the only ones who can lead. So I like the James River overture. I actually proposed a different approach to the same issue 7 or 8 years ago. It passed our presbytery, but somehow got lost in the mail, and thus was out of order to change the RAO, to amend the RAO to retire the CMC, Cooperative Ministries Committee. That's not a BCO issue. That's only in the
Right.
RAO. But that could be one or the other. It seems to me we must do one of those. We must either retire the CMC, again, good men, The most recent moderators I would count as good friends, longstanding, faithful servants.
Our three most recent moderators all joined Ruling Elder Dowling in his dissent regarding the Missouri Presbytery complaint about T.E. Speck against Missouri Presbytery. So we've had some great moderators in the recent years.
Yeah, and even when the National Partnership nominates a moderator, they've usually been pretty good. I mean, I remember Brian Chappell moderating a couple years ago, and he was supported.
He was
did
stellar,
an excellent job.
Stellar moderator.
He did an excellent
yes.
job. There's one or two clunkers we can think of, but that's true in all of our presbyteries and our sessions. And
I think some of them have left the PCA already anyway. So
I don't know about that, but I think the James River Overtures is well worth support. Again, I don't know how you speak against it. But I'm sure that the same group, the Women's Auxiliary, Boy Scout Troop 127, the local PTA, they're going to be involved. They're all going to say, "Oh, this is not good. We must be heard. You elect us as leaders, and if you don't want us to lead, don't elect us." Well, at some point in time, the PCA is probably going to take somebody up on that. It could be this year. It's a complicated, convoluted nominating process. I know the CRC, which is not worthy of imitation in every area, but at least in polity, they require that anytime a ministerial call is given, at least two names must be nominated. So it seems to me that we have nothing to fear from opening the church up. If other people want to serve as a coordinator, let them be nominated, let the church vote on them. And if the church supports our existing coordinators, they'll continue their work.
Yeah.
I'd like to see an average tenure. I know before Brian Chappell took office, which I forget when he actually did because it was COVID straddled, but about 2020, I can tell you the average tenure of stated clerks in the PCA was about 16 or 17 years because there were only 3 prior to him. Mm-hmm. The average tenure of some of our other coordinators, some of those could be longer, some are short. But again, I don't have anything. I don't have any animus. I'm not trying to fire anybody or get rid of anybody. If they can do a good job, great. But I do think there are times when we have to be honest with our leaders and our brothers and ourselves and say, let's give somebody else another shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you like to see the administrative committee focus on in the next several years?
Well, I think first of all, by faith needs to die a noble death and be buried. There's $650,000 out of a $3.5 million budget you can use. I think I told you. You asked me if I was coming to General Assembly this year. I didn't come last year because I was really just sort of had it up to here with the inability to do hotel reservations. I'm happy to offer my services to the administrative committee for 2% of their budget. I'll line up the hotels. I'll take it. Take it off your plate if you're too busy. If that's too hard, every other professional society seems to be able to do this. And it's not that hard. So I mean, I'd like to see the administrative committee. And I think a lot of people would just retire by faith. We just don't, there are too many news agencies, and we have a discerning community. People can filter things and decide what's true and what's not. That's really a sort of an old dowager vehicle. Back in the early 1900s, denominations had to have their newspapers and their journals and articles. That was a big deal. We're way past that in terms of media. I think administrative committee ought to be looking at ways to increase ruling elder attendance. Yes, there have been some nice numerical gains. Percentage-wise, though, it's hardly been a sea change. We've gone we hit a low of like 19% ruling elder participation. It jumped up to 20, 25, maybe 26, 27. That's nice. And our ruling elders do a good job. But there's some ways to work on that. The cost of General Assembly is unjustifiable. Where else do you go for a professional meeting and pay $550 to get a book of minutes? Every convention, every professional society I go to, the hotel and the ballrooms and the meeting rooms are built into the overall price. So that's not that hard to negotiate. Like I said, if anybody wants 2% solution, Man, AC could hurt my pocketbook. My retirement plan can take another hit after a bad week on the markets. If they'll let me do the hotel arrangements for 2%, and if it's over that, I'll eat it. If they want to charge us $10,000 for committee, we'll eat it. So,
So those who do not like David Hall, there are ways to hurt him
there we go.
without violating one of the commandments. Here we
That's
go.
right. That's right. That's right.
Oh my, yeah. So that I've wondered what is the purpose of a denominational magazine at this point, especially an online magazine in
Yeah.
2025. There's so many places. There's the Aquila Report, of course, the classic, and then everybody's got a blog. You've got a Substack, which I hope we'll talk about in a few minutes, and then your presbytery sent up another overture about directory for worship, Overture 26.
Right.
People, I've heard both, that the founders never intended us to have a directory of worship and that the founders wanted us to have a directory of worship. Well, you, David, as the author of the 50th anniversary edition of the history of the PCA, which is correct?
Yes.
Depends on which founder you ask, I guess.
It's both. Yeah. And here again, of 7 founders of the PCA, 15 have claimed to be founders of the PCA. Again, it was a mixed bag. I think the PCA was doing the very best it could in its early years. We had to put together a lot of machinery. The PCA wanted to be a denomination. They wanted to do things rightly. And that's not a 1-year task. It's not a 2-year task. It's a big task. And there was not, I think the hard truth is there was just not enough consensus. There was not enough agreement. And so I think the founders all mutually agreed, if we press this issue in 1975, 76, 77, if we press this issue as growing pains were occurring and different strains were manifesting themselves, the denomination would split. Because the reality was the PCA was not one of orthopraxy in terms of worship. I thought that there would be some strength that came in from the merger with the RPCS, because I attended Covenant Seminary in the late 1970s, and I know what was taught by Dr. Rayburn on the regulative principle of worship. And everyone might not salute and follow that, but I know what was taught in those years. And there was some very good pastoral theology that was being done by Dr. Rayburn at Covenant Seminary in the 1970s. I'm grateful for that. I'm blessed that I went to that seminary and enjoyed learning from so many godly men at the time. So I it's hard to say. Again, I guess I'd be a little skeptical of anyone who said the PCA founders are this, because there's a plurality, and it was hard to pull down. That's a big task. By the way, I saw there's another overture, I think it's from Calvary, to do this bite by bite.
Piecemeal. Yes.
I think the Calvary overture wants to make constitutional chapter 60 through 63. Is that it? I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think they consider those to be non-controversial. That might be a good test. That would be good. Any kind of start. Again, as we approach seeing our church grow, it's like a local church. We cannot be structural perfectionists. We're never going to get anywhere. The PCA, I guess that's the good news and bad news. The bad news is we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to reform. We're never going to get better. We're never going to grow to unleash all the gifts that God's given us if we don't make some decisions. The good news is we haven't fallen into heresy because we haven't gone anywhere. And maybe that's why I'm inclined to go back to your first question and say we're kind of in stasis. We're about where we've been. But directory of public worship is again, this is an important topic. It's well worth our time to roll up our sleeves. I think we can have good discussions. I think we're mature enough and we have enough experience to be sure we have diversity of opinions and practices. Well, let's address those. If not, I don't know when we ever will, but it has been noted that the PCA is rather atypical as a Reformed communion in not having some kind of worship standards. So we'll see if we do that. I'm told that folks who would, I think, identify themselves as being on the left wing of the PCA are most set in stone against this kind of thing because they view it as possibly constraining their liberty.
I was struck by something ruling elder Paul McNulty said. I asked him about academic freedom at a Christian evangelical school like Grove City, and he said academic freedom is one thing, but it begins in the context of truth. And I think there's something applicable with that
Mm,
regarding worship, that our freedom is, of course, constrained by truth, by the Word of God. And so, what better way to live in that freedom by carefully and clearly setting forth what does the Scripture teach
right,
on worship?
right. Yeah, I think we we again a local church can't do this. A local church has to face up to its issues and problems, and we have to deal with it. Sometimes we have to settle. We have to be deliberative. We have to be biblical above all things. We have to be sensitive. But change is not always bad. To see the PCA change, in my opinion, to come more closely aligned with the broad Reformed tradition, which extends back at least 500 years, and most of us would argue back to the patristic period, even
Mm,
drawing on the work of Hughes Old. The Reformers didn't begin a new theology or a new liturgy; they went back. So I think to me that's always been, as a historian, that's always been the standards. Not can we get the PCA back to where it was in 1973 or 1933. And I'm afraid we have to have a much bigger picture of that. And I think we also need to look at the global church. We need to be more aware of some of the exciting things that are going on in Reformed churches. I mean, there are tens of millions of Chinese Christians who are Reformed,
yeah.
and are doing some wonderful things. There's some wonderful things going on in Africa, and Kenya, and in Nigeria, and different places, and Uganda, and we're thrilled about those. Um, so let's learn from those and try to incorporate, I guess, all of the good gifts God's given us.
Hmm. And it kind of in that vein of the local church and the global church, Christian nationalism. We've got a couple of overtures dealing with Christian nationalism, whereas your focus is you're talking about tens of millions of Reformed Christians in China and Korea and Africa. But now we've got people who want to talk about Christian nationalism. Is that a threat to the PCA? What do you we got
You
raging
know,
Christian nationalists?
I I can't name one in our presbytery. I can't name a pastor or a church session that is presenting itself. Do we have members in the PCA who love that kind of stuff? Sure. Are there some weaknesses of that? Sure. Are there some strengths of that? Perhaps. But I will tell you, this is not a burning issue. This is a stalking horse. I think Christian nationalism is as big a threat to the PCA as pacifism is. I'm sorry, it's just not a big issue. Don't waste time on it. I'm all in favor of ad interim committees like the one we proposed on structure,
And
and an
paying
ad
for.
interim committee on the directory of worship. I have been opposed for at least 20 years, vocally so, to virtually every study committee that wants to address a theological topic because they just don't work, and it's a huge waste of time. I can tell you a lot of the study committee reports do more damage than good, and
Mm,
they become used not as tertiary standards, but as secondary standards. Not to say I'm telling you the Dosser report beats people over the head almost as if it's more important than the Westminster Standards itself. And so the church, if we want to do something a lasting effect, a study committee is not going to do anything but give the pious advice and the opinion of one particular assembly, which then will be used by partisans on both sides for
mm.
whatever goal they wish to. It's an enormous waste of time and energy. And like I said, I'd like to know where the problem is now. Okay, I'm sure two presidents overtured. I'm sure they've got some thorny, difficult people in their congregation, but I can pretty much promise you a study committee report on the PCA is not going to convince those people or solve that problem. So it seems like there could be much better ways to use our time.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of better ways to use time, you've been busy. I don't think I can wake up and not have an email from your Substack. Tell me about you've just started this Substack. I think you're up to about 500 articles now.
I don't know, but that's because I love you, Ryan. I just send you an email every morning. I get up at 3 and I have coffee and send you an email, and nobody else gets it but you. Yeah, no, I used to do some writing, and this is a little bit different kind of writing. Most of the things I've put my hand to in writing are sort of boring and academic tomes. My wife has been after me for years. She said, "Why don't you write something someone wants to read that would be short?" And I said, "Well, that's no fun." So, in some ways, I'm trying to do this. I just sort of I flirted with the Substack. I actually created it in February of 2024, and had a desire to do some things to rehash a number of studies I had done on political theology, and just ran out of time. And goodness gracious, this January um, was just an irresistible time not to do commentary. There was so much happening, and still is.
What
And
happened
that,
in
along
January? I
with,
forget.
yeah. That, I mean, we've had several things that kind of came together. I decided that I would try to discipline my time more, and read and waste less time on social media, and try to write an hour a day. So I'm getting up early and doing that. There are plenty of things to comment on. This Substack that I have, some people look at it and go, "Oh, you're just a pro-Trump uh, devotee." Far from it. Uh, I am just an anti-liberal, and there are so many ideas out there that I think this is going to keep me busy for a long time. And so, rather than writing long chapters or books, I'm trying to do op-eds that are normally in the 800 to 1,000 word range. It's been fun, and I can do what I want to. I can get things out quickly.
Hmm.
And I have a colleague, Michael DeWalt, who also works full time for Ligonier. He's in my office next door, who helped me, and I'm very indebted to him for getting this going. But I'm copying you, Ryan. You were on Substack years before I was. But it's also amazing, and I keep telling pastors, we have ethical obligations. We have to account for our words. We have to account for our hours, and far too many of our hours can be frittered away. So I'm trying to discipline myself and write consistently. Nothing that large, and it's been good. It's been challenging. It's been fun. And if anybody wants to read it, I hope they will. There's no
Yeah.
charge.
No charge, and reformpolitics.substack.com is the URL. Um, so to be clear, you will be at General Assembly this year, even if you have to stay in Dalton. Is that right?
No, not gonna do it.
Not
Not
going
gonna do
to do
it.
it. Oh.
So here's a way to keep me out of assembly. Assign me a hotel in outside in an exurb of Dalton. If we can't get the hotels right for the budget we have, goodness,
Yeah.
nobody should go. So I'll watch it on TV. I'll watch the live stream and write articles. Although Chattanooga's only an hour and a half, so uh, I'm a man of great principle. If you can't get a nice hotel, if we're going to do nice hotels instead of college dorms, then get a simple hotel room. But yes, I am registered. I and a couple of our pastors and all of our ruling elders will
Wonderful.
be there.
That's great. And Chattanooga is a great town.
It is.
My
It
wife
is.
and I honeymooned here. We love living in Chattanooga. And even if you're not at the Marriott that's connected to the hotel, I stayed, 10 years ago when General Assembly was here, I stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn. It was a 10-minute
Yeah.
walk, and it was a nice walk. So, and there's an electric trolley that runs, it's
Yeah, I
free.
think we were at the Reed House. I think we stayed at the Reed House in 2015, which is a nice old hotel. But if anybody in administrative committees is listening and can't get me any place closer than Dalton, I'll take a room at the Edwin.
Well, David Hall, thank you so much for your writing and your humor and these contributions that you've made to our General Assembly this year through your presbytery.
Thank you, Ryan. Great to see you again, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Thanks for joining the conversation on the Westminster Standard, which is the podcast of Jude 3. For more information or to support our work at promoting confessional renewal within the Presbyterian Church in America, please visit our website, jude3pca.org. Join us again next time. I'll talk to you then.